My name is Myron Wingfield, and I am the Associate General Secretary for the Division of Ordained Ministry here at Higher Education Ministry, one of the general boards of the church. And also co-hosting this webinar with me today is Bishop Sandra Steiner Ball, Episcopal Leader of the West Virginia area. And she's with us today from her office in Charleston, West Virginia. So good morning, Bishop, and welcome to you.
Good morning.
We're going to have a little longer introductions of both of us in a little bit, but as folks are getting logged on and getting settled in, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the orientation process for new DSs and DCMs to set the context for today's webinar. And also, as we're getting settled in, I hope you just relax and enjoy and take in this time together. Have a cup of coffee or something like that. I have mine, so pardon me if you see me drinking during the webinar. First, as many of you know and were able to see from the logo on this first slide, the responsibilities for orientation and training of new district superintendents and directors of Connectional Ministry is a collaborative effort, starting with the Council of Bishops and partnered by Higher Education and Ministry, and my office in particular, and Discipleship Ministries. Some of you may already know Reverend Ken Sloan of Discipleship Ministries, who works with me to coordinate this event each year and this training process. And he'll not be with us on the webinar today, but he will be with us when we gather at Lake Junaluska next month, and you'll get a chance to know him then. Our theme for this orientation and training experience for this whole quadrennium is cultivating vital ministry. And to support you in that effort throughout this first year, and we hope beyond, even through your coming years as a DS or DCM, we've made changes to the orientation and training and support process. For many years, you may know that the entire orientation process for new DSs and DCMs was confined to one long week at Lake Junaluska. And most participants said they found the week helpful and fruitful, but their evaluative feedback also indicated, together with our research that we've done here at HEM with other active DSs, indicated that we were expecting to accomplish too much during that week together. And some of the most useful information was just becoming a blur. As one participant said, after Tuesday, it was like water flowing over a rock. So what we've done to improve that process first is paring down the schedule that we have for that week and really trying to focus on the most important things to help you get started in these two new roles. And we've tried to provide these sorts of resources in the weeks and months leading up to our gathering at Lake Junaluska, not in Lake Junaluska. And we've also tried to follow up with you throughout the first year, or with other DSs throughout the first year, to provide them with timely information and assistance. And the third thing that has helped us greatly is your feedback, and those like you, the feedback of those like you who've gone before you. We really need to hear what you need and how you're experiencing these training and orientation experience offerings so that we can improve on them and make sure they're effective. And to that end, some of you, all of you, should have received a survey yesterday from the offices here at Higher Education and Ministry, and we're pleased to see, I think we had last night 25 responses. I haven't checked this morning, but thank you very much for that feedback. That will help give us a baseline of how you're approaching these new roles, and then how to improve on our offerings to serve you in these new roles. So thank you for responding to that. If you haven't, still time to do it. Please respond to that survey. I also want to take a moment and go to the next slide. Jason, actually, maybe you've given it to me. Yeah, there's the Cultivating Vital Ministry slide I was talking about a minute ago. And then these are the schedules for the 3 webinars that are coming up. Today, obviously, is the one on supervision. Next Wednesday, the 22nd, Meg Lassier, also on staff here at Higher Education and Ministry, will join me in a 50-minute to 1-hour webinar for personnel and personnel issues. And then later in the month, July the 29th, we'll have representatives from GCFA and COSRO to help with a presentation on legal issues. And you'll be receiving reminders and links for that. But none of these webinars are intended to be comprehensive in covering the whole subject. Rather, they're intended to begin this process of orientation, to get you thinking about it and to surface the questions that you may have about these issues. Or also to help us just establish a relationship, a working relationship with you, because we will be working with you throughout that week when we gather at Lake Junaluska and then in the weeks and months following. And we want you to know that you can rely on us and turn to us, and I want you to have a face to go with the name. The work we do, not only in this office, but in your office as DS or DCM, is primarily relational. And so to always give priority to establishing and maintaining good relationships is important. At this point, we're going to pause just a minute and move to another interactive exercise. These webinars are intended to be somewhat interactive, though in a limited fashion. And so to practice using one of those interactive tools and to give you a sense of where we are all located today, we have a mapping exercise. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jason to walk you through how to engage this mapping exercise. Jason, take it away.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, Myron. Folks, in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you'll find the pointer tool. It looks like an arrow icon. Just go ahead and click on that, and then bring your mouse down onto the map and click on the part of the world that you're joining us from today. Myron, looks like we have folks primarily from all over North America. You should be seeing that on your screen now.
We've included a world map because one of the design team members, Bishop Edward Kegai, is the bishop over the Episcopal area of Eurasia. And much of his Episcopal area is indicated in the lower right-hand corner of your screen in that section of the map. For those of you who are serving a large geographic district, you might want to know that one of his DSs in the Eurasia Episcopal area serves in Vladivostok, around that area to the east of his Episcopal region. I think I'm correct in remembering that she had to take a 12-hour train ride to get to an airport where she would take an 8-hour plane flight to reach the conference office. And that was so she could meet with the rest of the cabinet. I think they meet that way twice a year. As you can imagine, they are adapting to use Skype technology and other online technologies to communicate because of the vast areas they serve. But this is a great indication of where we are today. Thank you all for signing on and showing us where you are. I look forward to, I see some names I recognize there, and look forward to reconnecting with old friends when I get to Lake Junaluska and making some new ones. Thank you very much. Okay, Jason, is the ball back in my court here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Thanks. Very good. Well, I want to pause for just a minute and allow Bishop Steiner Ball to give a little longer introduction of herself so you can get acquainted with her. Bishop, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning again. It's wonderful to talk to you from West Virginia. This is my 29th year in ordained ministry, and I've kind of had the gamut of experience. I've served the multiple point charge. I've been an associate pastor. I've been the lead pastor, a district superintendent, director of Connectional Ministry, and a new church start pastor. So I've had a variety of experiences in terms of supervision and in terms of ministry. I grew up in the church, but I was not part of a pastoral family. So what I've learned about ministry and supervision have come from my experiences in the variety of ministry settings in which I have found myself over the years. And I have learned something each step along the way that has led to where I am now as an Episcopal leader, and I give God thanks for all those experiences, and I know that you give God thanks for all the experiences that have brought you to where you are today in ministry as well. I'm glad you're with us, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you more in Lake Junaluska as well. Please don't hesitate to ask me a question. I love to walk alongside people as they serve God and Christ and the people of God. Myron. Did you want to say
Thank
more?
You. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll just say a brief introduction of myself. It's good to be with all of you again this morning, and I am a lifelong Methodist myself. I was born into a pastoral family. Actually, my grandfather was also a United Methodist minister, and I am in my 26th year of ordained ministry. I, too, have served, actually, I started in the Virginia Conference as a full-time local pastor, and then after seminary at Candler School of Theology, married a Californian who's also a clergy person and moved to California. And I've served out most of my pastoral ministry there in the California Pacific Annual Conference, churches in Los Angeles and along the central coast between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and in San Diego. And one of the most fulfilling parts of my vocational ministry, my vocational time, has been the time I spent as a district superintendent over the San Diego, what is now the South District. And it was a wonderful experience, and it was from that role that I came to serve here at the in this Office of Higher Education and Ministry. And I, like Bishop Steiner Ball, find this to be a gift and an opportunity to be able to work with folks like yourselves who are entering into this role of superintendency or director of Connectional Ministry because of the extraordinary offering that you can make, the opportunity that this is for you to make a great difference in the life and vitality of the church in this critical time. It's an exciting time in the life of the church, I think. And based on history, presiding elder, as it's been called before, the district superintendent, and also that in partnership with the director of Connectional Ministry, have shown themselves over time to be a vital link in the connection. And many who've studied, many scholars, church historians who studied this say that it really is one of the most effective ministries of the church. So we look forward to living into that with you and hearing your feedback about your experience in this new role. We're going to move on now and ask this question. Why begin with supervision? Now, it is true that the key element of your job description as a district superintendent is to be the chief missional strategist for your district. And for DCNs, it's to be steward of the vision for the annual conference. That really is the starting place. And I want you to know that we will focus on that deeply when we get together at Lake Junaluska, and we hope that you'll already start thinking about what that means to be the chief missional strategist, steward of the vision. We're delighted to be able to say that we have Gil Rendell coming to be the keynote speaker this year at Lake Junaluska. And we've given him that topic to help us drill down on the questions of what does it mean to be a chief missional strategist? What does it mean to be a steward of the vision? But we also know that each of you should have received by now the 2-CD resource from the Lewis Center for Leadership titled A District Superintendent's First Year. And yes, it's focused on DSs, but DCMs can benefit from it as well. In that 2-CD set, Lovett Weems reports that new district superintendents, after completing their first year, said overwhelmingly that there were 3 key competencies that they needed the most. The first one is skill in coaching congregations in growth and renewal, cultivating vital ministries. That's the theme of our whole gathering. Secondly, they said they needed skills in conflict management, conflict transformation. We've devoted a full afternoon to that as well while we're together. But the third thing on their list was supervision skills. Many of them came into this role, well, most of us come into this role with having never been in a place where we actually supervised other peers, other elders, except if we were a senior pastor on a multi-clergy staff. And it requires new skills and a new understanding of our role. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, the Ministry of Supervision. And I'm going to ask Bishop Steiner Ball to lead us off on this next section where we look at what the Book of Discipline has to say about this. If we're able to accomplish what we're setting out to accomplish, we'll come to understand the practice of Ministry of Supervision as a means of grace and as a spiritual exercise in our relationships with one another. And as we say again and again here, it's a way of watching over one another in love. That's how we've understood it in the Wesleyan tradition. So with that brief intro, I'm going to ask Bishop Steiner Ball to say more.
Yes, if you look at paragraph 419, you'll find out that the ministry of a superintendent is the extension of the bishop's office. And it's a position where literally I, as a bishop, and other bishops place our lives into the hands of our district superintendents. When you as superintendents go out and are present within the community of faith, you are, people see the bishop through you. And so it's important to understand the relationship between you and your bishop, know your bishop, but also know your pastors and know your congregations. That's essential to the ministry of supervision. You can't be a mission strategist without really understanding the concept of supervising your pastors and your congregations and knowing your pastors and your congregations. You also can't be an effective mission strategist without knowing the vision of your bishop. First and foremost, I expect of my superintendents to be spiritual leaders. That is so important. In all of the aspects of things that you will be asked to do as a superintendent, you have to keep yourself spiritually healthy and whole, because this is the ministry of Jesus Christ. Let us not forget that. We are God's holy and beloved people, valuable, and the expectation is that we will be spiritual leaders together. What does that mean? Well, it goes back to the 3 simple rules, really. Do no harm, and I can't say enough about that to you who are coming into positions as superintendents. This means no gossiping. Some of you have liked to be in the background and kind of predict or make comments about what the bishop and cabinet has doing or is doing. You are now that bishop and cabinet, and it really is essential to maintain trust within the cabinet meetings, and that trust will serve you as you go out to work with your pastors and your congregations in your districts. Do good. We are people of the good news. Have good news on your lips all the time. So often we go out and we talk about things that are not good news. Let me tell you, the perspective of your ministry and the effectiveness, your effectiveness in being a mission strategist will just double, triple if you have good news on your lips. Point out where God is present. Point out the glory sightings within your district. Stay in love with God. Do not let your spiritual disciplines fall off the plate. You will need them now more than you've ever needed them before. Prayer, meditation, Bible study and reading, the means of grace, communion. Please don't let those things, those spiritual practices fall off your plate. Stay in love with God and care for your family. I can't say that enough either. Don't make the church your mistress. You need to take care of yourself and your family, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Take vacation, take your Sabbath. And I think one of the phrases that I use constantly with my cabinet is, no secrets, no subversions, no surprises. As a bishop, I can't have your back unless I know what's going on in your life and what's going on in your district. And that phrase actually is a phrase from my first bishop, Bishop Joe Yakel, the bishop who ordained me. And I have tried to live by that phrase and have encouraged my superintendents to live by that phrase. And one last thing about what the discipline says, it talks about accountability, and you need to have accountability. You need to set your expectations clearly, set them high, set them early, and don't just set expectations, follow through on them. You observe deadlines and help your pastors and your congregations to observe deadlines too. It will be immensely helpful to you in going forth as a mission strategist. Myron.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bishop. I wish we had time just to let you preach. That was really good. Thank you. And yes, we do encourage you to go back to the Book of Discipline and read those passages, if you haven't already, that outline your ministry as an extension of the Episcopal office. And you'll be better prepared to come to the conversations and the work we do while we're together at Lake Junaluska. One of the resources that we strongly encourage you to read in preparation for that time and to revisit throughout your ministry that will help guide you in a spirit and in a process, an ongoing process and role of supervision is Watching Over One Another in Love by Gwen Purushottam. Gwen was formerly the Associate General Secretary for the Division of Ordained Ministry here at Higher Education and Ministry, and she authored this book from her own experience as a district superintendent and out of her yearning to see that particular role in the church was lived out well. And so I am going to ask Bishop Steiner Ball, who I know has used this in her own training and for her leaders, to say a brief word about the feedback she's received from those who've used this and her experience of using this resource.
I use this resource both as a superintendent, as a DCM, and in my Episcopal leadership. This resource is wonderful. It talks in good ways about covenant making, about support, about sharing in ministry. Ministry is not just about the pastor, it's about the cooperation and working together of the pastor, the congregation, and the superintendent. I would commend the book to you. It also has a wonderful assessment. You cannot go find your place somewhere unless you map it out. You need to know where you are and where you're going before you can map out the steps in between. And so this whole covenant approach to supervision, I would commend to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And also, we want to say that we are wrapping up the development of a new ministry assessment resource, which we call Effective Ministry Assessment for congregations and clergy to set a baseline expectation of understanding of their particular mission and their particular place and how to build on their strengths and focus the direction of their ministries. We hope to have that ready, expect to have that ready by the end of the summer. And actually, Bishop Steiner Ball's conference, part of her conference in West Virginia, has been active in the pilot project and helped us develop this resource. So you'll hear more about that when we get to Lake Junaluska as well. Next, we're going to pause for just a minute and do a polling question. Now, as you were tuning in for this webinar, you were supposed to be hearing 3 songs playing in a loop, and I don't know if that actually happened, but we might have caught bits and pieces of some of them. I think we're having some technical problems there. But the first one was one that I think it was Rockwell that actually recorded it back in the 80s. But in the background, you hear this regular chorus of Michael Jackson singing, "I always feel like somebody's watching me." And then there's another one that any jazz fans might recognize the name Diana Krall. It's an old jazz classic called "I Don't Know Enough About You." And then Willie Nelson fans, country music fans, may recognize from his Stardust album, his version of "Someone to Watch Over Me." I selected those 3 songs as sort of a playful way of talking about various ways we experience or may have experienced supervision in our time of ministry. Bad supervision would be characterized as, "I always feel like somebody's watching me," someone breathing down your neck, or always checking up on you. That's not necessarily what we're looking for. It's necessarily what we're not looking for in supervision. And I don't know enough about you, I guess would characterize benign neglect. It's not someone breathing down your neck, but just the opposite, someone who's not paying attention. Also not a good model of supervision. But someone to watch over me, watching over one another in love, helping us to be our best and to draw out our greatest potential. That's what we're looking for in supervision. So with that little intro, I'm going to ask Jason to walk us through the polling exercise. And oh, wait.
All right, be happy to do that, Myron. So you should see the polling tool open up on your screen, a little pop-up there. Just take a moment and choose the answer that's most appropriate for you, A, B, or C, and then click on that Submit button.
Yeah, which one characterizes your experience of supervision? Was it someone always watching you, or someone not paying any attention? Or I hope there have been plenty of you who've experienced someone to watch over you. Which one would you say?
And I see those responses coming in, so I'll leave the poll open there for about, looks like 20 seconds remaining. Don't forget to click on that submit button. That'll give me the green light to let me know that you've completed the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And Myron, you should see those results on your screen right now.
Yes, that's good. It's encouraging to see that only about 31% of you would say that you've experienced it as, I don't know enough about you. I guess that would become benign neglect. I've had that experience before. And I actually did have one, but fortunately brief experience of I always feel like somebody's watching me. That didn't help very much. But the clear majority of you, almost 70%, say that you've had a positive experience of supervision. And that's a good indicator, a very good indicator. I remember when I was at another gathering of United Methodist clergy, the leader said, just asked for a show of hands of how many had actually served in or at any point in their lives been a part of a growing congregation. And surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, not many hands went up. And the speaker's point was that it's an additional challenge to lead a growing congregation when you haven't had that direct experience. And I imagine the same is true of the practice of supervision. If you haven't had a good model of that, then you're going to have to figure out how to do that. It's going to be a little harder. But there's plenty of help out there, and we encourage you to seek that because this is a foundational role in your ministry. Okay. Well, along those lines, Bishop, tell us about your experience with peer supervision. What's been a good model of supervision that you've experienced?
I've been fortunate to have had a lot of good experiences in terms of supervision, Myron, and those times when I have known that I was supported and affirmed in the midst of being held accountable and receiving feedback were the best times in terms of supervision. It was always helpful for me in supervision to have clear expectations set up front, but the freedom to fulfill those expectations with my gifts and my thoughts and my directions. It was always good supervision to have those expectations, but then be allowed the space to experiment, to perhaps fail, and then to have that supervisor help me to learn from the failure, which then made it not a failure anymore, but something that was to be used again in my life in a different way. Somebody who was present with me, but did not micromanage me. And also my experience with supervision is that good supervision does not triangulate. And I know that we'll get into that a little bit later. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you. We're going to move now to a section called the 12 Principles and Skills of Good Supervision. And again, we'll spend some more time on these when we're together at Lake Junaluska, so take note of them, and as questions come up, please note those. We'll also have an interactive time for you to ask questions later in this webinar, so make note of that. But Bishop, start talking us through these, reflecting on your own practice.
Reflection, I can't say enough about taking time to reflect on your practice of ministry. It is common for leaders today to confuse activity with productivity. And so you do need to do some reflection. You need to have some self-reflection in order to develop self-awareness, belief awareness, and time awareness. Those things are essential to becoming a missional strategist. It's also essential to helping you become comfortable in your own skin so that you can be that non-anxious presence that you need to be many times in the art and ministry of supervision. Two, you need to know your authority and to use it appropriately. Don't abdicate your authority, and don't mistake telling people what to do as holding them accountable. And here I just want to say a word in terms of authority, is that you're in maybe a new position for you, and you may have heard it said before that a DS is a pastor to the pastors. That is a myth, folks, for you can never take off the supervisor's hat. There will be times when people share with you things that if you were their pastor, you would have to hold confidential. But in this supervisory role, if some things are shared with you, you're going to have to do something about it. You can never take that supervisor's cap off. So know that authority. Be pastoral. Always be pastoral and spiritual, but be honest with yourself and others that you really can't be a pastor to the pastors in the way you've been a pastor to a member of a congregation in the past. And we'll talk some more about that at Lake Junaluska. And also invite others to share ownership. You need balance and perspective. This is a spiritual formation exercise to study, to pray together, and to work together as a team. It really is. Ownership is about spiritual formation, and it is a spiritual exercise. Myron?
Yeah, and on that last point, the only thing I would say in addition is that going back to Gwen First-Shotham's book, that covenant-making process is a wonderful process and way to an avenue by which you can share responsibility, share ownership of the ministry, as we say here, both with the clergy, and encourage them to share ownership of their ministry with the lay leadership of the churches that they are in. And
absolutely.
And so that really commend that covenant-making process as a very formal way of clarifying with all the participants what it means to share ownership of this ministry. Moving on to the next three, and just note our time, Bishop. Our target time to make sure we stay on it. The next one, and the Bishop has mentioned this already, is to make your assumptions, your standards, your expectations clear. First of all, to yourself. Really think through what's realistic, what your own patterns of expectation for your work are, and how you're going to communicate that to others. But also make it clear to them what you expect from them, and what you expect to be accomplishing with them. Timing, standards of basic calendar keeping and reporting of that as far as the ongoing work of the district and how each pastoral leader participates in that. Making sure you're communicating deadlines and what is needed in those requirements. Make sure you're real clear with yourself and others about all that. Fifth, give and invite regular feedback. This is somewhat challenging to do with larger districts, but there again, because we do have the marvels of modern communication, in some ways it's getting easier in the fact that calls, online video conferencing, and other ways to meet and confer with the leaders in your district or in your conference if you're DCM are available to you. And it's important that it be a two-way street. There are appropriate boundaries to be held as far as those in the field offering critique for their leaders, but still they need to be able to give you feedback and know that you'll receive it if they're not getting some of the support that they need from you, or if there are other things that they need from your office that will be helpful. You need to take the initiative to open up that avenue because of your new role of authority. And then third or sixth, identify, sort, and prioritize the issues. You'll hear a lot from Gil Rendell, I'm sure, about how you really can't do everything. And so you have to be real clear about establishing what is most important and communicating that to others, again, so that they are measuring and watching for what you're measuring and watching for. So identify, sort, and prioritize your issues.
Yeah, that comes back to the time awareness piece, and feedback is very, very important. If you've got, talk with your pastors, talk with your congregations, your SPRC, your staff constantly, and give feedback, positive and the challenges. Nobody should wait till an evaluation time to hear what's going on. Help others determine their own solutions. When somebody comes into my office with a challenge, I always try to help them take it out with a way to handle it instead of leaving it on my desk for me to take care of. So help others to determine their own solutions. Help them to think it through. And when they ask you where something is in the discipline, help them to learn how to use the table of contents and the index. You are not, your role is not to be a living discipline for your pastors or your congregations. Help them to use the resource book. Test your assumptions through listening, through appreciative inquiry, through listening. Ask yourself constantly, is it important, am I doing the right thing instead of being concerned with being right? You should lean towards doing the right thing rather than being concerned with being right. And again, be aware of triangles. Talk to the people you need to talk to. Don't go around people. I had an experience as a DS and a bishop where somebody went directly to the bishop and shared a situation that was going on, and the bishop at that time failed to talk to me as a superintendent and get the other piece of the story, and made a decision without having that crucial other piece that would have changed the whole situation. So that's triangulation. Talk to the people directly that you need to talk to, not around them.
Absolutely. I said to many staff parish relations committees during the 7 years that I served as a district superintendent, if I had a uniform that I wore to their meetings, it would be a T-shirt that had a triangle on it and an X across it, because that was the main hurdle that I had to deal with in working with staff parish relations committees, is the way they would allow themselves to get triangulated with the congregation and the pastor, and the way, and it is a body that is fraught with that possibility. So help them and help yourself learn how to avoid that and to function in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
These next three are really a lot about just self-awareness. We've talked about that some now. Learn to recognize when you're getting hooked. Really, it's most often anxiety about these things, or our internal reactions, our emotive reactions to different circumstances that we will encounter as district superintendents, that you will encounter as district superintendents and DCMs. They have physical manifestations, and different people report different ones. Their ears turn red. They get this feeling in the pit of their stomach, whatever. Know what your signals are, and even before that, when you have thought patterns where you keep rehearsing a problem but aren't really moving toward a solution, pay attention to those things. And again, I find it's helpful always to have a sounding board that you can go to, somebody that you can trust, whether it's another district superintendent, that's often the case, someone with appropriate boundaries, but also sufficient awareness of your circumstances to help you deal with that. That's one of the best exercises in self-awareness, is spending time with someone else that can help you be aware of yourself. And that's the next one. Practice that. be regularly on it and aware of the fact that you're being watched and observed and evaluated a lot of times in ways you don't know. And what we do and say matters. Again, and often in ways that we don't think of ourselves. So not to become self-conscious to the point of being paralyzed, but to know what you're putting out there, so to speak, and to know the effects of that on the people you're working with. And finally, don't go it alone. You'll see later in the research that Lovett Weems did with active DSs is they found again and again some of their greatest help came from other cabinet members or former DSs who were able to give them counsel and guidance and assure them that as lonely as it felt sometimes, they weren't alone.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there and give you a chance to give any questions that may be coming up from this part of the webinar or any part of the webinar so far. And Jason, what has anything come in so far?
Sure, I'll be happy to chime in here, folks. I'll just remind you can send in your questions using the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Look for the question mark icon. When you click on that question mark icon, that's how you send us your questions. And Myron, just to let you know, we've got 34 folks that are joining us here online, and many have told me in the chat window that they've got several gathered around the computer there with them. So we probably have close to 50 folks with us. And about 10% of our audience are on mobile devices. So for those of you on a mobile device, you can find the Q&A panel as one of the hidden menus there in the upper right-hand corner. Just tap on that menu button, and you'll see the Q&A panel there, and you can send in your questions.
That's great. That's good news, and I'm glad that folks are watching this together. One of our hopes all along has been that as we produce these and keep them available either through WebEx or our Higher Education Ministries website, Cyber Campus, that they would be used and discussed among cabinets, not just for new DSs, but as refresher courses for practicing DSs. And we would love to have your feedback about that, if how this has been helpful, if there are other questions that come up, and we'll be giving you another email address toward the end of the webinar where you can send questions that come up afterwards.
Hey, Myron, we've had a question come in and asking if you could just repeat principle number 12.
Oh, okay. Don't go it alone. Not exactly sure what it was about that they want to know, but that former DSs have said, or active DSs have said that one of the most helpful things to them in the lead up to and in the first months or first year of their ministry was regularly consulting with other DSs. And when they said that, when we asked them to say what didn't work, is when they said they tried to go it alone. That some point of pride or some culture of expectation within their particular cabinet led them to feel like they needed to be a lone ranger and to figure it out on their own. And that usually didn't work so well. So we just encourage folks to actually engage with the people with them, around them. Okay?
And develop teams within your own cabinets to have conversation and lead teams within your own districts so that you can talk and share about the mission and ministry of the church and work at spiritual formation together. Don't go it alone is really a practice in listening and humility, essential for supervision.
Indeed. Okay, we're approaching the last quarter of our webinar here, and we had one more polling question that leads us into the next section, and that is based on the fact that many of you know already, it's probably a good chance it's happened in your conference, that many conferences across our connection are reducing the total number of districts, which has the effect of enlarging each respective district. And so we're trying to get a reading on what size district you're serving. So the screen ahead in front of you right now shows 5 options, and we'd like you to now engage the polling option there on your screen. Tell us what size district you're serving. And this is for DSs, obviously. Jason, you want to give any other instructions just to help people know how to do it for sure?
Sure, you should see that pop up on your screen, and I'm seeing many folks are using that tool right now. Don't forget to hit that submit button. That gives me the green light to let me know that you've completed the poll.
I, during my time, went through that transition in the California Pacific Annual Conference. When I first started serving the San Diego district, it had about 48 churches, 48 congregations within the bounds of the district. By the time we'd gone through a realignment of our district from 8 total to 5 total, the number was closer to 80, almost double what I'd been serving before. And the geographic area had expanded the same. And I'll say say something about how we did that, and how we continued to get our work done in that new arrangement in just a few minutes, as soon as we look at our polling.
Yeah, when I was serving as a superintendent, I had a little over 100 churches on the district that I served, so I'm familiar with the larger districts and the challenges that gives to some superintendents. All
right, I've closed the poll, and you should see the results up on your screen now. Myron, looks like we've got a good sprinkling of a little bit of everything here.
It does, and I'm not surprised to see that over half of them are 76 churches or more. And actually the largest percentage in this group shows over 100 churches in your district. So that is a shift from the last time we took this poll 2 years ago. And it was a little more in the middle there, I think, before. This is clearly trending toward larger districts in this sampling of new DSs. So that helps us a lot in knowing how to move forward in helping you. And so we're going to next talk about the 7 strategic points of supervision. We're going to spend a lot more time on this when we're together next month, but for right now, we're going to give you a quick overview of this. And Bishop, start us off. What would you say about these first 4 points?
Well, the thing to remember about these, about supervision is that consultation, all of these points of supervision are also points of consultation. Consultation happens all the time, over and over again, because you can never take that supervisor's hat off. This is really important to understand in these larger district situations, because you will run into your pastors and you will be in contact with your congregations in a variety of different circumstances, and in each touch point you will absorb information that will become part of your supervisory process. The District Committee on Ordained Ministry, the provisional process, the DS and pastor conferences that can be done one-on-one, and I would encourage that in the beginning you do that, because I said before, you need to know your pastors in order to be an effective missional strategist or an effective director of Connectional Ministries. You need to know your pastors and your congregations, but as you make those initial contacts for supervision, you can also do them in some group settings or mission area settings. And SPRC meetings and ministry assessment, all points of consultation, all points of supervision where you're exchanging, giving and receiving information. Myron.
Yeah, that point you make about the first year, especially, and the importance of being an itinerant circuit riding pastor who goes around your district regardless of the size, regardless of the number of churches and pastors, to really spend some time on the ground with each of them and getting to know them. Obviously, if you have over 52 churches, it's going to be, and depending on the way your conference is arranged, it's going to be harder to get to every church on a Sunday, but you don't have to get there on a Sunday to have a sense of who they are, where they are, and to meet with their pastors. Very important to do in the first year. In larger districts, harder to sustain over the following years. And there are strategies and structures for organizing those larger districts in particular. I think it works for any size district, and that is the cultivation of a geographic arrangement of churches in a relationship together in what I prefer we call mission areas, because it says what they're designed to do, to be in mission to be in mission together in their area. Some conferences call them clusters, some call them sub-district. They're different names, but the purpose is to develop a community and an organized effort somewhere between the local church and the annual conference, and that has been very helpful. We'll say a lot more about that when we're together next month. But I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to start exploring that kind of structure, and to give us feedback about what your experience is or what some of your challenges are in working with that structure. Then we also look at charge conferences and mission area gatherings. Charge conferences are a good regular way to keep in touch with the churches, but I do see a trend of more and more conferences doing cluster or grouped charge conferences. And so long as it's organized well and again, expectations are clear, that can actually be a very invigorating way to do it rather than problematic way. Helping congregations and clergy see that they're part of something bigger, not just their own congregation. And mission area gatherings that, again, those gatherings of clergy and lay leadership in between the charge conference season over the course of the year to focus on the question of mission and outreach and evangelism. What are you doing together in those areas for the church as a whole, and not just for your congregation? The appointment-making process, another key point of supervision, and it gives you a more intense case-by-case way of assessing the profile of the congregation of the pastor and of helping to match those for best results. I've also seen that process augmented, improved, not just by what each pastor knows or which each district superintendent knows about the pastors on his or her district, but also what is observed by watching those pastors function in a grouping of clergy in their mission area or others. That's often more telling and helps get a better sense of a person's strengths, gifts, what they're bringing to the team, and how best to place them in ministry. And then, of course, we all don't want to deal with it, but sometimes you almost certainly have to deal with the complaint process. And that's where, going back to Bishop Steiner Ball's earlier point of saying, it's important to try to get it right, of course, but don't be so concerned about being right as about doing the right thing. And I would also say this is a point where you have to really come to terms with something a lot of us pastors in our personality profiles deal with, and that is the need to be liked. You're going to have to come to terms with that need to be liked in order to do the right thing sometimes. And that is, again, a point that we'll hover over when we're together next month, because time and time again we hear new district superintendents say that's the toughest hurdle, is learning that you're going to have to hold your peers accountable in a way you haven't before. And the complaint process is clearly one of those ways that happens. So we'll help you with that.
Yes, and I would say by and large through my years of ministry, it's been important. People don't necessarily have to like my decisions or like how I do something, but they need to be able to see me as a person of integrity and a person who is fair and a person of respect. Respect of myself and respect of others. And by and large, that overtakes that being liked thing. So just keep that in mind. Indeed.
Thank you, Bishop. Okay, yeah, we're now moving to the last Q&A. And remember that this is not just for this webinar, but this is an opportunity for you to give questions that will help guide our preparation for next month. So whether you get it into this webinar or we'll give you an email at the end of the webinar where you can send them in the days ahead, please give us your questions, your scenarios, any concerns you have that will help us prepare to work with you next month. So, Jason,
Thanks, Myron. Yeah, folks, send in your questions. And as Myron mentioned, the great thing about this webinar technology is once you send in your questions, we've got it. So if we're not able to answer you during our time together today, we'll be able to follow up with you offline or maybe even later in person. So I'm going to allow you all to go ahead and submit those questions and let them tally up here in the queue. And Myron, why don't you speak a little bit about what folks can do to prepare for our time together, as well as please mention the resources that are going to be made available to them after this webinar.
Indeed, we're going to wrap it up here in the next few minutes, and this is the first point in that is to remind you that if you have time, it's not a very thick volume, but it's a very substantial volume, and that is Watching Over One Another in Love. If you can get that resource and read it before we are all together, that'll keep you ahead of the game. We hope that you've received a District Superintendent's First Year 2 CD set from the Lewis Center for Leadership. If you have not, please contact us at this office and we will make sure you get it. And listen to that. It's a wonderful resource. Talk to other District Superintendents and DCMs. Talk to former and active and just glean from their wisdom. That's a great way to be spending these first weeks and months in your role. And again, send us your questions, topics, and scenarios that you want us to explore. A reminder about our next webinar. That will be Wednesday a week from now. Personnel, you'll be sent a link to do that. And remember, you have to register so that you can be on time when the webinar begins. And the address that you want to send your questions to is there on the screen, ds-dcm@gbhem.org. And it'll help us to sort through those if you'll put in the subject line webinar feedback. That way we'll know where it's coming from. And let's see, the next thing is a closing word, just to wrap this up and to send you on your way for the day. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope it's been helpful.
Thank you.
This is from the resource that the 2 CD set, where DSs were asked, are there things that new DSs did during their first year that were not helpful or did not work? And the 4 top answers were trying to do too much, overcommitting, not asking enough questions, not consulting, too little attention to office and administrative assistant, in other words, sharing the work, allowing those to help you, who can help you, to help you, and then not enough time to care for yourself, to rest and renew. So all those things point to the indication to start your patterns of good self-care now and tending to yourself so that you can be the effective leader that the church needs in the coming years. And then also, are there things that did work, that were helpful? Predictably, attention to prayer, spiritual life, and the healthy routines of rest and renewal, self-leadership, as Mike Slaughter calls it. Time to talk and listen with clergy and laity in the district. Just listen. It's work, but it's rewarding work to listen and get to know those you'll be working with. And then talking with other DSs, seeking their advice. Strongly encourage you to take time for those important but not urgent things. And again, thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. We look forward to working with you. And Bishop Steiner Ball, I'm going to ask you to bless us on our way as we draw this time together to a close.
Sure. Thank you again. I'm looking forward to being with you. May the Spirit of God abide with each one of you as you prepare for this new calling in ministry. May you feel the blessing of God's Spirit with you, guiding you, and may the Lord watch between us now while we are absent one from another. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bishop. It's a joy to work with you, and I look forward to seeing all of you again next week, next Wednesday. You'll be hearing from us in the meantime. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.